Hey, Sea Dragons, we're going to look at 14.3 Argumentative Essay Graphic Organizer. If you are here, then you probably have already completed your annotated bibliography, which means you've chosen your topic and you have some resources that you think you want to use, and you know in a general sense what your argument is going to be. So at this point, you are looking at this document and thinking about how you are going to start fleshing out your essay by filling this in. And so we're going to begin with the attention grabber, or what we also call the hook. So we call this a hook because it catches the reader's attention, kind of like hooking a fish and reeling them in. It makes the reader, reels the reader in, and makes the reader want to read your essay. And so we're going to begin with our argument, which we also know as the claim or the position statement. And so I looked on that list of argumentative prompts from the New York Times, and I picked one that I knew a lot about, and the question was whether or not online learning is as effective as face-to-face learning. I figured that one was super timely considering the fact that you have been learning online for a year. So here's my claim or my position statement. Under certain circumstances, online learning can be just as effective as face-to-face learning, but this depends on a number of factors, including the student's access to technology, the teacher's ability to focus on online content, and the technological savvy of both students and online teachers. And so as you can see from my position statement, I'm setting myself up to have these three body paragraphs: student access to technology, teacher's ability to focus on online content, and then my last body paragraph might be about technological savvy of students and online teachers. So I'm going to show you different hooks or attention grabbers that you could use to start your essay. So the idea would be that you would pick one type, not that you would use all of them. And this is, I know that writing the first sentence of your essay or getting your essay started is often the hardest part. So the claim or the position statement would be, if we look at our graphic organizer, this is where the position statement would go. So now I'm going to work backward and go to the hook. So one way of hooking your reader is by using an analogy or a metaphor. And this whole experience throughout the last year, I have thought over and over that this is almost like watching a movie. So I went with that metaphor. So I wrote, generally, people go to the movies to escape reality, sitting in darkened theaters, munching on popcorn and Twizzlers. We watch heroes face seemingly insurmountable obstacles. A deadly virus is on the verge of changing life as we know it, but a ragtag group of doctors saves the world at the last minute. The name of this movie? COVID-19. Who were the characters? We are. How will it end? We don't know yet. At this point, all we know is that everything seems different, including school. My second type of hook or attention grabber is starting with a famous quote. So, scientist Charles Darwin once wrote, "It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change." On March 13th, our world changed. Schools in North Carolina closed their doors, and many students have yet to return. My third option is taking a cliche and turning it on its head. So I played around with the idea that cliche that students hate going to school. So school's canceled, teachers are posting assignments, but there's no penalty for missing work. In essence, summer has begun 3 months early. Isn't this the dream of every high school student in America? Perhaps not. Students, it's time to teach yourselves. All right, the fourth option that you can choose for starting your essay and hooking your reader is a shocking statement. COVID-19 might be the best thing to ever happen to the public school system, an institutionalized form of learning that has been largely unchanged since its beginnings. So, one thing that you want to avoid is beginning with a question. First of all, um, it makes your essay sound really immature because that is a crutch that generally elementary school teachers and middle school teachers encourage you to use. And so it's been done so many times that it has turned asking a question to start your essay has turned into something that's kind of a cliche. So you want to avoid it. Things like, what can people gain from their failures? What is it about failure that actually leads to success? Well, why are you torturing the poor, exhausted essay reader? So avoid the cliche of opening with a question, and your essay will sound much more sophisticated. The next thing that we have on our graphic organizer is a description of the issue. And so, what this would look like in your actual essay, maybe something kind of like this. I took this paragraph from an article titled 10 Ways COVID-19 Changed the World. It appears on the website Life Science. And honestly, I just thought it was a really good example of how a writer can provide background information on an issue. So if I'm using this as an example, I'm not saying quote this whole long I wouldn't quote this whole long piece. I'm using her writing as an example. So, children seem to be largely spared from the most severe effects of COVID-19, but they can still act as spreaders of the disease. So many schools across the US and the world made the decision to close in 2020 and opt for virtual learning instead. Questions around how long to remain closed and how to safely reopen were the subject of much debate. As fall arrived, with the number of schools still closed, many children seemed to be falling behind in learning. Statewide polls have found that nearly 9 in 10 parents are worried about their children falling behind at school due to the pandemic closures, according to the Educational Trust. So, if this were my essay, if I were actually crafting my essay, I would perhaps begin with something like an analogy or metaphor, one of the other examples of hooks. And then I would have a description of the issue. And then I would have my position statement. And so when you put it all together, you have a pretty lengthy, substantial first paragraph that sets up the remainder of your essay. So when I continue filling this out, paragraph 2, the first thing I'm going to put in here is my first reason why online learning can be just as effective as face-to-face learning. My first reason would be something along the lines of, if students have access to technology, then their online learning experience can be just as effective as face-to-face learning. That would be what I would write here, and then I would include a couple of quotes about that. My second reason would be something along the lines of, if teachers have the ability to focus solely on online content, then online learning can be as effective as face-to-face. And then I would find a couple of quotes that I might want to use. And then my third one would be about the technological savvy of both students and online teachers. That would go here, and I would find a couple of quotes here. Now, my counter argument would be the opposition. So, many parents feel that online instruction cannot replace face-to-face learning. And then I would, find some way to refute that argument. And then my second counter argument might be about the social aspects of online learning. How are students going to have an opportunity to spend time with their peers? And then I would refute that possible counter argument. And then How might I restate my position? I'm not going to use the exact same language that I used up here. When I say restate, I mean you're going to change the language a little bit. I'm going to summarize my 3 reasons. And then my call to action would be what we can do with the new information that we have. So, how can we move forward from here? What can we do to enact this change that I've advocated?